Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and GameFound over the next week. And if you're new to the channel, we do this every week going over all the upcoming campaigns, so if you want to stay up to date, definitely feel free to subscribe at any point if you find this content useful. But if you want to see even further into the future, I do have two other options for you. The first is to go ahead and check out BoardGame Co's channel because he puts out a ton of excellent content, but also at the start of every month he puts out a video going over the campaigns that are launching in that month, and he already has his video up for the month of May, so you can go ahead and check that out if you want to know more. And also I do have a Discord linked down below, and if you want to stay completely up to date in real time with the campaigns as I find them, I always add them to the Discord first and they get categorized into different categories, whether they're launching this week, next week, or even in an upcoming month. And of course you can always jump into the chat for each of these because we share all sorts of info as we find it and engage in all sorts of very interesting conversations. And I have all notifications turned off on the Discord by default so that you don't get spammed. But if you want to get notified anytime I add a campaign, just head over to the Rolls channel and click the little Kickstarter button at the bottom, and that will sign you up for notifications and you'll just get those pushed to your phone if you have Discord installed. And one more thing before we get into the campaigns launching for this week, I do like to go over some new discoveries that I just found out about in the past week. And there's a campaign that launched last week that I definitely should have told you about because I'm actually friends with the creator, but she forgot to tell me, so I was unable to tell you. But this is being launched by Katya Howitson, who makes all the board game mosaics that you find at the end of each of these videos. I really do like the artwork that she puts together, so I really enjoy having those as a little Easter egg. But every year she launches a campaign for a calendar that features 12 of these pieces of artwork. And if you like the mosaics at the end of the video, this is an excellent way to support her and also get yourself one of those calendars for your own game room. And since we are all gamers here, as an added bonus, she even added a page in the calendar that has a 10 by 10 challenge where you can choose 10 games that you want to play 10 times throughout the year, and you can track your progress on that sheet in the calendar. But if you're not interested in the calendar but you do like the artwork, you can also go ahead and check out the add-ons because you can get individual prints for the ones that you like the most, or you can also get all sorts of other items that feature the artwork in different ways. And that's all I really had for updates, so let's jump into the Kickstarters. And the first campaign we have launches on May 9th, and this is called Escape from a Dying Planet. And this plays 2 to 8 players and takes about 20 to 45 minutes to play. And this is a competitive game where players are competing to try and get the most treasure. And the way that this game works is that it plays over 10 rounds, and each round has 3 phases. And at the start of the game, each player is going to be starting with their own personal deck of cards, and they're going to be drawing 5 into their hand. And the first phase of each round is the challenge phase, where a challenge card is going to get drawn and put face up for all players to see. And then each player will be able to commit cards from their hand face down on the table because they are trying to get a total point value of cards that is higher than the point value of that challenge card. For the players that were able to do that, the player with the highest point value is going to be able to take that card into their hand, and then they can either add it to their deck and use it in future turns, or they can instead use its one-time use ability and then discard that card for the rest of the game. But for any players that were not able to reach the threshold requirements of that challenge card, they're going to gain contamination cards equal to the threat value of that card, and those are going to be worth negative points at the end of the game, and they also clog up your deck. After that phase, we go into the treasure phase, where 2 treasure cards are going to be revealed face up, and then players will bid again with whatever cards they have left over, and the player who has the highest bid will get the first pick of those treasure cards, and then whoever bid the second highest will get the second treasure card. And since you only have 5 cards to play each round, it's going to be up to you how you want to divide those up between the 2 rounds, because then we move into the third phase, which is just a quick cleanup, and you draw back up to 5 cards once again. After 10 rounds, the player with the most points wins the game. And the next campaign we have launches on May 10th, and this one's called Cryptodome. And this plays 2 to 8 players and takes about 45 to 75 minutes to play. And this is a strategy game where players are going to be playing as asymmetrical characters, which each start with their own unique starter moves. And players are going to be moving around on a board that's randomly set up at the start of the game. And the board has all sorts of paths that players have to follow as they move around the board. So not only do they have certain movement restrictions based on their character, but they also can only move according to the available paths that are out on the board. Tiles are also put randomly around the outside of the board, and some of these are going to be power cores, which are used to win the game, and the first player to get 3 of those wins the game. But instead of going for the core, you could also go for an ability tile, which doesn't help you win the game, but it does give you an edge for your future turns. And on a player's turn, they can perform 2 actions out of 4 different options. And the first is to move on the board following their movement restrictions, teleport back to the start of the board in the center, or to draw a card. And the cards in this game can grant you some special actions or abilities which can help you move further across the board, but they come with their own movement restriction that must be met. Or they could be some take that cards which help you eliminate your opponents and send them back to the start of the board. Or instead you can place a new tile onto the board, which is going to change the way that those paths connect, and you can create new connections and help you move around a little better or to hinder your opponent's movement. But you'll want to be careful with which tiles you move onto, because if a stack ever reaches 4 tiles, then all those tiles are discarded and any player on that space is going to get moved back to the start of the game. And the game continues like this until a player collects 3 cores, and the first player to do that wins the game. And of course you can find links to this and all the other campaigns in the description below. And the next campaign, also launching on May 10th, is called Hunters of the Lost Creatures, and this plays 2 to 4 players and takes just 15 to 20 minutes to play. And this is a set collection game where players are trying to collect creatures of different values and colors. And the way that this game works is that you're trying to collect different sets of these creatures to score victory points at the end of the game. You're going to be getting points based on the variety of cards you have, as well as the different sequences of numbers that you're able to collect. And to get these creatures, players are going to have to play a hunter card that matches the same color of that creature. And once you put that hunter card out, if you're the only one that put out that color, then you get that creature. But if more than one player plays the same colored card, then that creature hides and no player gets that creature card. As players are drawing hunter cards into their hand, they can also gain some ability cards, and these are going to give you some special abilities to help you or hinder your opponents. At the end of the game, players will add up their victory points from the creatures they collected, as well as the different sets, and the player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game. And launching on May 10th, we have Tiny Epic Vikings, and this plays 1 to 4 players, takes about 45 to 60 minutes to play, and this is a drafting, area control, and set collection with a Viking theme, and this one is also our Discord pick of the week. And I really do think this one earned it, because after digging more into the rules, I think this one is very elegant in its design, and if you do enjoy Viking-themed games, especially ones like Blood Rage, I think you'll definitely want to pay attention to this one, because it packs that whole Viking theme into a very streamlined and tight package. And the way that it does this is that the game plays over 3 eras, and each era players are going to be drafting cards into their hand. You start with 4, and then the second era you're drafting 5, and then you're going to be drafting 6 in the final era. And there's a main board where players will be deploying their ships, fighting for the most influence at the different islands in order to gain the victory points associated with it, and players can also engage in battle over these different treasure cards that are surrounding the board. And there's a few different gods that will be increasing their fury throughout the game, and each god is associated with a different rune, which can be found on these different cards, but they can also be found on these different tokens on the different islands on the main board. And the reason that all that's important is because the different runes are what will grant you victory points at the end of the game, and the amount of fury of the god that each rune is associated with is going to scale up the amount of victory points that that rune is worth. So if a god has more fury than all the other gods at the end of the game, then that rune is going to be worth the most. And players are going to be taking turns playing a card from their hand, and these cards are actually multi-use, but I'll go over the most basic use of them first, which is to spend the actions on the card and paying any associated costs if it has a cost for that particular action. And these different actions can grant you movement points so that you can spend amongst your boats out on the board to move them to different locations, or they can allow you to gain different resources, build different structures to gain more influence on different islands, or even to deploy Vikings at those islands to increase your influence even more. As I mentioned before, each island will have a token on it associated with a particular rune, and the player that has the most influence on that island is going to be the one that holds that token. But the influence is constantly changing throughout the game, and as players move their characters around the different islands, that's going to fluctuate the amount of influence they have there, and other players may swoop in with their ships and Vikings and take that island from you, and in that case you'll be handing the token over to them. And the different runes that you have in your possession aren't only used for victory points, because to perform certain bonus actions on the cards, you might need to have certain sets of runes in order to activate it. I think this creates a really interesting mechanism where players are trying to trade certain runes and sacrifice one rune to get another in order to set up a chaining effect so that they can perform the actions that they want to on their current or upcoming turn. And another really neat thing about this is that each time a rune token transfers from one player to another, it's going to increase the fury of the associated god, which will then potentially increase the value of that rune token as the game moves forward. But of course, you are all Vikings, so it'd just be wrong if you all continued to live in peace, which means that there is going to be some battles. And any player can initiate a battle on their turn, and the way that they do that is that they just take one of their cards and then they place it face down so that nobody knows which card they played, and then they're going to choose one of the cards around the board to battle for, and then all other players will be able to commit one of their Viking cards into that battle as well. And this is another really interesting way that the runes come into play, because depending on the number of runes you have and the type, it can actually multiply your power or add to the power of your Viking card. But for all the players that lost, you're still going to gain honor and rewards and Valhalla, and the way that you do that is you check which rune icon is associated with your Viking card, and then you're going to be able to use the special ability of the god that's associated with that, and you'll also be able to increase their fury. So you might even want to enter battles just to lose so that you can increase the value of the runes that you have in your possession, or use a special ability to your advantage if that option is better than using your card for its actions. And if you are a fan of Blood Rage, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of similarities between these two games, and that is not a bad thing. In fact, I'm really impressed with how much they've been able to distill a Blood Rage-esque game into a tight, tiny package. I think all the design here looks really streamlined and elegant, and the more I looked into it, the more and more I was impressed with the game, and for that reason, this one is definitely getting my personal pick of the week. I do own Blood Rage, and it is a favorite game of mine, but I think this one really captures all the things that I like about that game and delivers it in a slightly different way, and obviously in a much smaller package, which is really interesting because this one is way more accessible, way more travel friendly, and definitely plays in a shorter amount of playtime. I'm really impressed with this one, and as a YouTuber with virtually no credibility, Scott Elms, if you're watching this, I just want to say really nice work here and congratulations on the beautiful design. I'm really looking forward to giving this one a shot, and if this one looks interesting to you as well, I have links to the campaign in the description below, and you'll definitely want to go ahead and get notified on launch so that you don't miss out on this campaign. And while we're on the topic of pocket-sized games, the next campaign we have launching on May 10th is Battlecrest, and this is a 2-player game that plays in about 20 minutes. And if you're interested in travel-sized games, this is going to be coming in a really small package because this is a button-shy game. And this is going to be offering you a tactical skirmish experience similar to games like Summoner Wars or Unmatched, and I don't have too much more info on how this one plays, but if you're familiar with those games, that should give you a pretty good idea. The players are going to have a character card as well as a health card, and they're going to be playing different abilities and actions in order to attack their opponents. And the neat thing here is that the cards are actually double-sided, so there's some additional abilities that you can find on the other side of the card. Players can also navigate to different locations, which can have some different modifiers and effects. Unfortunately, this little teaser is all I'm able to offer you right now, but if you want to know more, I do have links to the campaign in the description below, and then check out all the details once the campaign launches. Also launching on May 10th, we have Trailblazer, the John Muir Trail, and this plays 1 to 4 players. It takes about 30 to 120 minutes to play, and this is a competitive game where players are going to be scoring victory points throughout the game, but then also scoring points at the end of the game based on set collection as they try to complete the trail while exploring different destinations, admiring different sites along the way, engaging in daily encounters, managing natural and personal resources, and then also strategically using gear in their backpack in order to give them certain benefits along the way. Each round starts with players choosing a resource card from the display, which is going to grant them some resources that they can spend later in the game. After that, players take turns spending their action tokens, which they can use to do things like move along the main trail, gain or spend different trail or field guide cards, which can grant you different resources, which they can spend using another action to visit different hard-to-reach places to earn that location card. Players will be able to collect different trail cards depending on what they can see from their current location, and these different cards can score victory points in different ways. Players have limited space in their backpack, so as you gain new items throughout the game, you're also going to want to be using them to get the most out of all your actions and all your available resources, because if you're not able to reach the end of the trail, then you're not eligible to win the game. But if you're running low, you might also be able to spend an action to visit a nearby lodge and restock on your supplies. The game continues to play like this until the end of the game, and the player with the most victory points at the end wins the game. And also launching on May 10th, we have Microcosmos, and this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 40 to 90 minutes to play. And this is a game where players are going to be exploring space, visiting different planets, rescuing different survivors, and returning them to their home planets, while also terraforming any planets that they discover and making them more habitable. Every turn, players will have the opportunity to upgrade their ship, and then they have to move their ship to another planet. And then players can use any of their crew cards that they currently have on their ship in order to gain or convert resources, or perform different abilities depending on the location that they're currently visiting. One thing that's really neat about how the crew cards work is that you can put them at either the top or the bottom of your player board, and depending on which side you choose is going to dictate what sorts of actions you have available to you. Putting those cards on the top of your board is going to grant you access to the actions at the bottom of the crew card, but if you put them on the bottom of the board, you're going to get the actions on the top of the card. After that, the player can then perform any destination actions. So depending on the planet they're currently visiting, they can terraform that planet by providing different resources that that planet requires in order to boost its terraform rating and gain victory points associated with that. Or instead, you can scout for more crew cards or survivors, or create colonies on that planet to boost your resource generation and gain more victory points. The game ends after 3 planets have been terraformed, and the player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins. And launching on May 11th, we have Saw Ray, and this plays 2 to 4 players and takes about 30 to 60 minutes to play. And this is a competitive city building game where each player is given a plot of land and equal resources at the start of the game. And then you're going to be building up a little bit of a tableau, deciding which buildings you want to make, because those are going to grant you some different abilities which you can use on future turns. And then you're going to be building up your city based on your plan in order to score victory points. Unfortunately, I looked all over the interwebs and I couldn't find a whole lot of info on this game, but it does play over 3 phases. First, there's the planning phase where you're going to be choosing what type of building you want to build. And the next phase is the production phase where players will be using a push your luck mechanism to try and get more and more resources. But if you push too far, you could bust because your worker force will revolt against you. But the nice thing here is that you can also use the abilities from buildings that you've built on a previous turn to help give you a little bit of an edge and make pushing your luck just a little bit safer. And then finally, there is the construction phase where players will be spending the resources that they generated in order to build more buildings, but you can also trade your resources with other players or with the board itself in order to gain the resources that you need. And of course, this is going to create a little bit of an engine where you're building buildings to generate more resources, which you can then use to build more buildings. And the push your luck mechanism seems to be the centerpiece of the design here, so if you are interested in this one, I definitely recommend looking into more of that. I scoured the internet and couldn't find any more information on it, so it sounds like they're only going to be announcing this on the actual campaign when it launches. So I apologize in advance that I don't have the answer for you right now. But if you want to know more, you can check out the link in the description below, and you can also follow along to get the publisher's very first game added to your pledge completely for free. Also launching on May 11th, we have SuperUkranian, and this is a cooperative fantasy card game that's set in Ukraine, and players are going to be working together, building up their own heroes, customizing their gear and special abilities in order to visit different territories in Ukraine to fight dwarves, level up their character, and gain rewards which they can share with their teammates. Players are going to be fighting and leveling up their character in order to reach a final boss, and if the players are able to beat that boss, then they win the game. This is a game that I just found out about hours ago, so unfortunately I wasn't able to dig much more into the gameplay, so if you want to know more, you can definitely go ahead and check out the link to the campaign in the description below. And launching on May 12th, we have Resist, and this is a solo game that plays in about 20 to 40 minutes, and this is a really well-designed solo game, so if you are interested in solo games, I think this is definitely one that you want to be paying attention to. And the way this game works is that you're going to be starting the game with a deck of 12 rebel cards, and there are a few different rebels that can be included in each game, which can add some variability to your play, but each of the cards also is dual use, where one side of the card is a more mild ability, but it allows that card to go back into your deck so you can use it again in the future, whereas the other side of the card is going to give you a more powerful ability, but when you use it, that card gets discarded from your deck permanently. At the start of the game, there's going to be 4 different mission cards out on display, and each of those cards will have an enemy value associated with it, and that's going to dictate how many enemy cards you need to draw and put above that mission card. But then each card's also going to have a target point value, and that's the amount of points that you need to collect amongst your rebel cards in order to complete that mission. Each round, players are going to be drawing 5 of the rebel cards into their hand and then choosing a mission to try and complete, and then you're going to be combining those rebel cards in different ways to try and achieve higher than the point value on the card in order to complete that mission. But the catch here is that each of the enemy cards are going to be flipped when you go to complete that challenge, and they're each going to have a point value associated with them as well that you're also going to want to spend your rebel points in order to defeat those characters if you want to, because it's not mandatory to defeat the enemies to complete the mission, but any enemies that are surviving after you complete a mission is going to activate their special abilities. All the abilities are negative and can cause things like civilian casualties, adding cards that will clog your deck, and some of these enemies will actually protect the location, and you do have to defeat them before you're able to complete that challenge. And if in the end you're not able to complete that mission card because you had to deal with those enemies, then that mission card is going to get removed from the board and not replaced with a new mission card. This is going to make the game harder because you're going to have less missions to choose from in future turns, and you're also going to be a lot closer to losing the game. The game continues like this until you've either lost too many civilians or too many missions in which you lose the game, or instead you can choose to end the game after any successful mission to lock in the victory points that you've achieved so far, and lock in that high score that you can try and beat on a future play. Links to the campaign in the description below. And launching on May 14th, we have Slash and Spells, and this plays 2 to 4 players. It takes about 60 to 120 minutes to play, and this is a competitive game where players are going to be starting the game with an upgradable hero, where they're going to be upgrading their skills and gaining new items to make their hero more powerful as the game progresses. And then players are going to be taking turns performing a few actions on their turn. You're going to be able to perform one basic action, and then you're going to be able to spend energy to play any amount of action cards that you have in your possession. And these different actions will allow the players to move around the map, complete different quests, defeat encounters against the game, but also attack the other players, because the way you win this game is by getting the most knockdowns at the end of 7 rounds. And the really neat mechanism here is that when you pay energy to play cards from your hand, those actually go into a little river of 3 cards under your player board. And each player's river is going to get shifted over 1 card to the right at the end of each round. And if you already have a card in the rightmost spot, it's going to fall off, getting discarded for the rest of the game. Or if you play enough cards so that you're adding more than 3 cards to that river, then the rightmost card will also get knocked off. And the reason this river is so interesting is because any of the cards that you have there that you previously had to pay to use are now free to use in place of one of your basic actions. And the game continues like this for 10 rounds, and then the player who has knocked down the most other players at the end of the game wins the game. And those are all the campaigns, but don't leave yet, because as always we have a few awesome giveaways to announce, and these are super easy to enter. All you have to do is leave a comment down below so I have something to draw from. You don't have to like, you don't have to subscribe, you don't have to visit anything. All you have to do is leave a comment down below, and that will get you entered into this giveaway. And the first one we have is for a pledge for Through Ice and Snow. And this is a really interesting game that is as much about exploration and logging new discoveries as it is as surviving and trying not to die, because players are going to be exploring the Northwest Passage and discovering new species of animals and discovering new locations as they sail their ship through the new land. This is a Euro game that has a similar theme to those like Encyclopedia or Darwin's Journey, but if you're looking for something that has a little bit more danger in the theme, then this is definitely one to check out. Players will each have 3 different workers as part of their crew that each have their own benefits in different ways that they work, but then players can also recruit Inuits into their worker pool that can help them with different actions such as hunting or exploration. And then players will be weathering any storms that come their way, upgrading their sled and ship, and then try to maintain the crew's morale as they try to gain the most victory points through making different discoveries. And this giveaway is going to be for a mystery pledge, because they did actually tell me which pledge it was for, but then they changed the pledge names before the campaign launched, and I'm not smart enough to figure it out, so I'll have to reach out to them and get clarification on that. But it will get you one of these pledges, and all of these look fantastic, and entering this giveaway is completely free, so you'll definitely want to do that. So all you have to do is leave a comment down below with the hashtag mystery and share something mysterious with us about the ice and snow. For myself, I'm from Canada, so I'm well versed with the frigid north, and we have something here called the Wendigo that will possess adventurous travelers, make them completely lose their mind, and run through the snow until their feet fall off. True story. And the next giveaway we have is for Cytress, and this is a game where each player is going to have their own player board, and each board is going to be able to generate different resources depending on different trigger events throughout the game, and players will be able to put workers out on different areas of the board in order to upgrade their board to generate more resources based on those different triggers, which will create a powerful engine where players can generate more and more resources as the game goes on. And then you're going to be spending those resources for further upgrades and to build different structures out on the main board to earn you victory points, which of course are used to win the game. There's also a really neat tower associated with the buildings that players can escalate in order for some other benefits. And this giveaway is going to be another awesome one, but it's also another ambiguous one, because I'm not quite sure what the publisher meant in their message to me, but they said it would be for the original and all pledge levels. So I think that means that it's an all-in pledge, but don't quote me on that. I'll reach out to the publisher and get clarification, but it won't stop us from drawing a winner, so you can go ahead and leave a comment down below with the hashtag Cytress. And let us know if you could generate one resource for the rest of your life. What would that resource be? And just to keep this a little bit more interesting, I'm going to put one limitation on it and say that you can't generate money. And also whatever it is that you are generating, you can't exchange for money. For myself, it's an easy answer. I'm definitely going with sushi because it's one of the best foods ever and it's the best when it's fresh. So if I can just instantly create that and have all I can eat at any moment, I don't think there's much more I even need money for. And the next giveaway we have is Extravaganza, and this is probably one of the most fun themes that I've seen in a while, because in this one you're playing as drag queens and you're trying to compete in different competitions of singing and dance. Not literally, this isn't a party game where you're singing and dancing, but you're going to be playing different cards to perform different acts and earn victory points. And this game actually has quite a few interesting mechanisms that I haven't seen in any other game, because there's some really interesting ways that you move around on the stage and collect different tokens. And then there's another interesting mechanism where you're drawing dance cards from a shared display, but if there's more dance cards of a single color, you're incentivized to draw those ones because you'll also get lip tokens equal to the number of cards matching the color of the card that you took. You can then upgrade those dance cards with the tokens you've collected and then spend those lip tokens to complete different lyrics, which all grant you victory points for the end of the game. The design on this one really looks impressive, and if this looks like a fun game to you, I highly recommend checking my previous video where I went to a lot more detail on this game. And winning this giveaway will get you a pledge for the base game and all unlocked stretch goals. And to enter this giveaway, I'm going to be doing this one a little bit differently. All you have to do is check out the Discord in the description below. Check out the giveaways channel and click the little emoji underneath the post, and that will get you entered into the giveaway, which will get automatically drawn at the end of 7 days. And now let's go ahead and draw the winners for last week's giveaways so we can all be super jealous of whoever wins, because these were some pretty epic prizes. And the first one was for an all-in pledge for Uprising, Titans of the First Age. And to draw a winner, I use this fancy application here. All these extra names down here are bonus entries for my Patreon subscribers. If you like this sort of content and you want to help support the channel and make all these efforts just a little bit more sustainable for me, I truly appreciate you checking that out, but it also gets you some additional entries into these giveaways, which is always a nice bonus. But let's go ahead and draw those comments and draw a winner. And the winner is Michael Wolcott, and this is one of our Patreon subscribers, so congratulations, Michael, you just got yourself a pretty epic pledge here. Just email me at adam@shelfclutter.com and we'll get that pledge all sorted out. And the next giveaway was for another epic pledge, and this was for Wayfarers of the South Tigris. And we're going to do the exact same thing here. Let's go ahead and draw those comments and draw a winner. And the winner is Rini Barber, and this is another one of our Patreon subscribers. Congratulations, Rini. Just email me at adam@shelfclutter.com and we'll get that pledge all sorted out. And the last giveaway we had was for Lawyer Up Season 2, and this one was run over on the Discord. So if you did go and enter that giveaway last week, definitely go ahead and see if your name got drawn. You should also get a notification, but if you don't have the app installed on your phone, you'll have to check manually. I do reach out to the winner if I don't hear from them, but that still requires you to get that notification, so it's always good to check the Discord just in case. And that's everything I have for you this week. It's kind of nice to have this shorter week because I've been insanely busy, and also I just spent the last few days planning out my Gencon visit, which I had mentioned in a few videos before that I was trying to figure that out. And just when I booked my hotel, I ended up getting a wedding invite in the mail that is smack dab in the middle of Gencon, so it turns out in the end I'm not able to go to Gencon because I'm also in the wedding party, but maybe the right answer here is that I just need different friends. Kidding. So instead of Gencon, I've been looking into Origins, which is in Ohio in June, and I still have a little bit more figuring out to do there, but as long as everything checks out and I have no other weddings scheduled over the same time, I will definitely be trying to make it there, and I'll give you an update in a future video as soon as I get that locked in. If any of you are also planning for Origins, it'd be really cool to meet some of you, play some games, and probably get my butt kicked. But until then, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.